Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's CJ Met again. Carrie.
In 1974, it was the first book published by Stephen King, and was a trailblazer for a soon-to-be mass of novels and short stories that would make him a modern name in the horror genre. It focused on a 17-year-old high school outcast named Carrie, who soon discovers she has telekinetic powers. When a cruel prank is played on her at her prom night, these newfound powers bring devastation to the school and the town. I love this book, and for the past 7 years it has remained my favorite book of all time. The pristine detail, the different points of view, and the overall feeling of realism despite the craziness of what you're reading. So when I heard that a movie was made in 1976, I knew I had to see it.
But I was disappointed.
I mean, when I hear that a movie is a classic with as much hype and build-up as this movie, I expected a lot more, especially since it was based on something I loved so much. But I found out online that there was also a made-for-television remake. It was to serve as a two-part pilot for a possible TV series about Carrie, but was cancelled due to bad ratings. And I am glad the series didn't go through, because I think it might have potentially ruined the story of Carrie. But you know what? I'm really glad they made this movie. I found it so much better written, acted, and delivered. And most importantly, it did the book justice. So I found it a real shock online when I saw that the movie wasn't that well received by fans or critics, a lot of people calling it insufficient compared to the first one. The remake does have a fan base, but not a big one, and most people wonder why people like the remake at all.
But what does each movie really have to offer? This is my comparison review of Carrie.
Let's start with our title character, the Bloody Prom Queen herself. Both actresses definitely look the part. They both can look rather drab, but are also easily beautiful. Angela Bettis is one of the few things that critics did praise about the remake, as well they should. She was sympathetic, without being too much so, and she actually has character change throughout the movie. A lot of people, when they first think about the storyline, often think of her as very weak, but Carrie's not really a weak person. She's just a person who's been told she's weak for so long that she's believed it. And Angela Bettis definitely shows her other side well. I like Sissy Spacek as an actress, but I never got why she was given this role. She just doesn't speak well in the movie. I know Carrie is supposed to be shy and soft-spoken, but she just portrays it so awkwardly. Granted, she is good at making us feel sorry for Carrie, but sometimes it's just too pitiful. And I'm just gonna say it because I haven't heard enough people say it. Her accent is so ill-fitting for this character. I can't take it seriously.
Things are gonna change around here. He's trying to trick me again, I know. It's me. Me. Why didn't you tell me, Mama?
First sin was intercourse.
I swear I'm sweating like a sinner in church.
This was given an Oscar nomination, people. So was Piper Laurie as Carrie's mother in the original. Though I understand it a little bit more as far as the mothers are concerned. With them, it's more a matter of preference than opinion, since they both are played very differently. Piper Laurie's performance as Margaret White has become sort of a basic picture of a raving holier-than-thou art, whereas Patricia Clarkson's portrayal is more subtle. I'll give the original credit that Piper Laurie's facial expressions are pretty good, and she is definitely the more memorable of the two. But how should I say this? It's very easy to be memorable when you're acting over the top. And over the top doesn't necessarily mean good acting. There are times that you can tell she's just reading what she's saying off a script.
Help the sinning woman see the sin of her days and ways. Show her that if she had remained sinless, the curse of blood would never have come on her.
Patricia Clarkson isn't as memorable, but she goes a bit deeper. You can tell she really does believe all these things she says, outrageous as they are.
Don't you know I can see inside you? I can see your sin as surely as God can. You've gone so far astray, I fear for you. I don't want to think about what's going to happen to you.
Her grip on her daughter is as much psychological as it is physical. It's actually kind of funny to see her play Carrie's mom and then see her play Olive's mom in Easy A.
I told you your sin would find you. Although we were kind of hoping you'd get knocked up, so we'd have a second shot at raising kids, really do it right this time.
So, yeah, kind of a toss-up on this one. I prefer the remake, but I guess I can't blame people for liking the original. Opposite the mother, you have the gym teacher, sort of Carrie's fairy godmother. She comes off a little harsh at first, but she warms up to Carrie and shows a lot of empathy for her. As a gym teacher, Betty Buckley doesn't have much command in her voice, at least not in this movie. It's funny because she would eventually go on to play Carrie's mother in the unsuccessful Broadway musical, almost the exact opposite role. And although the character wasn't written that well, I honestly think she did better as the mother. Rena Sofer in the remake does have a lot of command in her voice and is much more believable. Like, compare these two scenes when she's telling off the girls for what they did to Carrie.
Now, I want you all to know that you did a really shitty thing yesterday, a really shitty thing.
I want you all to know what you did on Friday was a really nasty thing.
I feel like Betty saying shitty should be stronger than Rinna saying nasty, but it's totally the opposite. It's that way with a lot of Betty's lines. The lines she's saying are intimidating, but when she says them, I don't find them that strong.
You get canned for this, you bitch! What? I'm gonna knock you down, do you understand me?
You'll get canned for this. See if you don't, you bitch!
I don't really care, Hargensen.
If you...
Rinna Sofer is a lot more intimidating with a lot less given to her. And then later, we get to see her softer side when she's talking to Carrie at the prom. To Betty Buckley's credit, she does do this scene pretty well, but it's the contrast between playing the hard and the soft sides that makes this character great, and Rinna Sofer handles both well. Then we have the other villains, Kris and her boyfriend Billy. In the original, she's played by Nancy Allen, and I don't get much character from her the way she's written. She's just kind of your typical bland bitch who wants to be a bitch for no other reason than just being a bitch.
That bitch.
Emily DeRavin plays her role more cruel, but also with more depth. Granted, bullies don't usually have great motives anyway, but they explore more of her dislike of Carrie.
That's such a load of crap. This is Carrie White's fault. She walks around like she gets her mass and go bless down a holy family. She's always freaking out.
Oh, please. She's been working that martyr bit since the 1st grade, and I'm sick of it.
In the original, Kris just sort of says she hates Carrie, all while pleasing her boyfriend.
Billy, I hate Carrie White.
At least when I'm being a bitch, I'll cop to it.
There's one scene in particular in the remake where she has a seemingly friendly conversation with Carrie.
So, I take it you've leveled out since last Friday?
What about it?
Well, you have to admit you totally overreacted. You know, we were just messing around. We wouldn't give you a hard time if we didn't like you. I mean, we all really like you, you know that, right?
I can vouch for that. I was bullied in high school, and almost every encounter was followed by that statement.
Now that you guys are all cozy, she'll have you tossing them back like communion wafers.
I'm not cozy with Sue Snow.
Really? She's acting like you're her new best friend.
What makes this scene so interesting is that we don't really know exactly what her angle is here, especially seeing as how she's already planning to get revenge on Carrie at the prom. Maybe she's hoping to seem innocent, maybe she's trying to frame Sue for the eventual prank, maybe she just wants things to go wrong for Sue, or maybe it's all three. But whatever it is, you can tell that she's smart in a way that's not good for others. What about her boyfriend Billy? The book paints him as being rather abusive to Kris while seeming to be wrapped around her finger. While neither movie does this exactly the same, I still greatly like the remake better. In the original, Billy is played by John Travolta, who really just seems like that idiot that's smart enough to realize people think he's an idiot, so he makes pathetic attempts to gain respect.
I thought I told you never to call me that. You know, you are totally fucked up. That's it. You really are, I know that.
In the remake, he's played by Jesse Cadot, who I'm shocked to find hasn't done that much acting outside of Carrie, which surprises me because I think he did really good in this movie. Just look at his expression. He looks like he could snap at any second. He comes off very creepy in some scenes and could very easily be threatening. Granted, he does seem a little over the top at times, but it's in a way that the other characters acknowledge it also.
If you get caught and even mention my name, I'll kill you.
Hey.
Then we have Sue and her boyfriend Tommy. Both pairs are portrayed by good actors, but in the original they both have a similar problem as Kris. Neither one has really fleshed out that much. It's weird because there are times in the original that I feel like they want us to focus more on Sue than Carrie, even though I don't get much personality out of her, which truthfully is a little hard with her character. Sue is very much a blank slate, a typical high schooler. She takes part in teasing Carrie, but has enough conscience to have some remorse. What sets her apart is that she takes the extra step by asking Tommy to take Carrie to the prom to make up for it. What's interesting about that scene is the original shows just her request and his reply.
I want you to take Carrie White to the prom.
Okay, I'll do it.
Whereas the remake just shows the conversation in between, where you obviously get much more substance.
It's totally mean. She'll think it's a joke, and so will everyone else.
She won't think it's a joke if you don't make it a joke. Take her and be nice to her and hold her hand.
You get much more insight on their thoughts and how they both feel about the situation and how each of them feels about Carrie. You get a little bit of that from the scene in the original between the two of them and Miss Collins, but the whole scene seems like one big walk in a circle. It's the same when Tommy goes to ask Carrie. Neither Tommy or Carrie shows much enthusiasm, and you get the sense that neither one likes what's going on.
You better go.
Not till you say yes.
No, I can't.
Yes, you can.
In the remake, we see him really trying to give her reassurance as he's trying to convince her.
They'll laugh.
No one will laugh. If they do, I'll kick their ass.
We see that Tommy is having fun with this in spite of the fact that he's not going to the prom with his girlfriend, and that Carrie is thankful for it, although it's hard for her to accept. Next we come to the special effects, which is kinda apples and oranges here, but not in a way that either one is the clear winner. They both have their drawbacks. The original was a 70s movie on a slightly higher than independent movie budget. The remake was a made-for-TV movie. Neither one's effects are really top-notch. Like, compare the scenes where Carrie uses her powers to keep her mom from interfering with her to go to the prom.
Sit down and be quiet!
That totally doesn't look like she just threw herself onto the bed. Whereas in the remake, she sends her mom sliding across the floor. I'd be lying if I said I couldn't tell that was a green screen shot. But where the effects really come out is in the infamous prom scene. There are, however, two things I do like that the original version does. The first is the altercation between Sue and Miss Collins. I like the build-up it gives to the blood being dumped, and it adds an extra dose of tragicness when we see just how close they came to avoiding the whole bloody disaster. If Miss Collins had listened to Sue, it might have been very different, especially since they were both just trying to help Carrie. The second is Kris and Billy being there to see Carrie's destruction. I kinda like how they get to witness everything happening in front of them, knowing that they had a hand to play in all of it. But for such a famous and well-known scene in cinema, I found this to be a real letdown. The use of the red filtering and split screen are, I guess, kinda clever considering their budget. And Sissy Spacek gives a good death stare, but this whole scene feels so garbled. It's all very slapstick to me. Once the fire starts, I get a little more into it, but that doesn't even happen until the last 30 seconds. The fire hose soaking the people just seems silly to me, especially compared to Carrie electrocuting everyone through the water-soaked floor in the remake. Which brings up another point. I know that Carrie is often thought about as a revenge fantasy, but you have to admit, as tortured as she is by most of these characters, you still feel a bit upset that she is killing them. Again, that's why I like the remake better. Everything happens without Carrie's realization. In the prom scene, the blood being dumped on Carrie causes her to snap, and her powers take over subconsciously. She remains in a trance-like state, destroying the school and the town until she gets home, where she doesn't remember a thing. In the original, after she knowingly kills all the people at the prom, she goes home and carries on like nothing happened. I also like how the remake included the destruction of the town, as it makes a deeper impact on everyone, but I will admit that that's where the effects become a little see-through, and again, the original had a small budget, so they couldn't really portray it that well. Another thing that I like that the remake does is its portrayal of Christianity. I'm a Christian myself, and even though I loved the book, I never really liked the picture it painted with Margaret White. And with a movie like Carrie, it would have been very easy to have the underlying message that Christianity is completely bad. But they added a scene in which Carrie makes it clear that what her mother lives by is not true Christianity, and that she still retains her own beliefs different than that of her mother's.
You really think I'm gonna burn in hell, Mama, just for going to my prom?
Sin will find you, Carrie, and when it does, not even Jesus can help you.
Jesus will help me. He will help me if I really need him.
Not if he doesn't love you.
And besides me liking it for that reason, the scene does a lot to further the characterization of Carrie. We actually see her trying to be strong here and not just snivel in the corner letting her powers do everything.
Jesus loves everybody, Mama. Even me.
There's also a clever structure to the movie. Much of the movie is shown in flashbacks and alongside police interviews with people from the prom night massacre. This also keeps in the spirit of the book. You see, the book is written in an epistolary format, told through newspaper headlines, book excerpts, and magazine articles, which makes what you're hearing and reading about sound all the more real. The same works in the movie. I won't spoil the ending too much, but I will say that while the remake's ending is bittersweet, it still has hope to it. It does deviate from the book, but it's also still done in the same spirit as the book. The book's ending focused on how the death of so many people left a town feeling empty, and the remake definitely kept that. They actually show the graves of the people who were killed and have several characters talk about it. The original's ending focuses on Sue and how it was a traumatic experience for her, but like I said, I don't get much character out of her, so the ending for me feels rather feelingless. I'm sorry, but I can't for the life of me see why the remake was seen as the inferior when it appears to trump the original in almost every single aspect. I think the biggest thing is the lack of character development in the original. I just don't get much honest interaction between these people. It really does feel like a series of events without much emotional connection between anyone. The remake has gotten some attention online in the last decade, but for the most part, it's either gone unnoticed or has been utterly panned. And I hate that people write it off immediately just because it's a remake.
If you've seen both and you prefer the original, leave a comment and tell me why. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I've shown you what makes the remake better to me. What makes the original stand out better to you? And I'm looking forward to seeing the new remake, and I can't wait to see how they portray the story this time around. So, this is CJ Met, signing out.